Welcome to our webinar today, Forecasting the Future, What's to Come for the Intralogistics Sector. It's the latest webinar in the Intralogistics Live series brought to you by Linde Material Handling UK, which explores the big talking points in this critical area of the supply chain. My name is Dave Harris, and I am joined by a number of industry experts today to see what's coming down the road in the fast-moving world of intralogistics, which plays an increasingly pivotal role in getting our goods from A to B more quickly, more reliably, more efficiently, and more sustainably than ever before to meet customers' high expectations. On our expert panel today, we have Professor Aris Matopoulos. He is the Professor of Supply Chain Design and Director of the Agile Supply Chain Research Club at Cranfield School of Management. We have Benjamin Bird, Business Development and Solutions Design Director at USEN Logistics UK, a leading player in international freight forwarding, contract logistics and transportation. David Coombs is the principal of the newly established National College for Logistics at Bedford College, which was only launched just last week. Dr. Arthur O'Sullivan is the Managing Director of Linde Material Handling in Ireland, and also the company's sustainability champion for the Keon Group in the UK and Ireland. And Laura Nelson, who has been a panelist on this show before, and she is the Managing Director of the RTITB, the leading workplace transport training accreditation body for more than 20 years. So over the next 55 minutes or so, we're going to delve into what's hot right now in the intralogistics sector, from automation to AI, from digital twins to smart sensors, from last mile fulfillment to decarbonisation, and from workforce development to the evolution of their roles. We'll get the perspectives from all our industry experts on the developments they see emerging as we head towards 2026 and beyond. So welcome everybody to the webinar. First, a question for all our panelists, I think, to get things rolling. I want to ask you, where is the intralogistics sector right now in terms of its evolution as technologies advance, customer demands become ever greater, the drive for greater sustainability continues unabated, and a shift in workers' skills and roles gather pace? And is it making good progress, or do we need a reality check as to where it currently is? So, Aris, maybe I could start with you on this one.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks for organizing the webinar. It's a real pleasure to talk about this topic. So I'd like to start with giving a little bit like the bigger picture, and the bigger picture says that not just in the UK, you've seen a tremendous expansion of the intralogistics sector. The projections suggest that it will double by 2030. So we're talking about $100 billion globally. So definitely the sector demonstrates excellent progress, whether it's in adoption of robotics, automation in general. And I think most companies, or to put it differently, you won't find many companies that have no automation plans in place. I think that's the bright side, let's say, so on the technology adoption, but maybe perhaps the other part of the story is a bit more grey in terms of perhaps the workforce, the sustainability aspects. So I think that's probably the current situation as I see it at the moment. So it's a tale of two trajectories, I think.
Okay, thank you. Benjamin Bird, could I come to you next? Same question. Where are we now?
Well, I think in terms of this panel, my kind of seat is around being the customer of the intralogistics sector, if you like. So we're buying a lot of that technology as a 3PL. And originally, when we first started our journey, it was about point automation. So it's about things that you could do to processes to make them a little bit slicker, a little bit easier to manage. I think what I'm seeing, not just in USEN, but also across the sort of 3PL market, is that now there's a lot of logistics companies who previously probably wouldn't have looked at automation because we're very contract driven. So we've got a very short space of time to depreciate something. And now we are totally going into that area now. We're looking at robotics, we're looking at ASRS systems that we never would have looked at before. And then there's a lot of other companies as well that have got really good sort of leasing options that we haven't seen in the market before. So from a cost perspective to a 3PL customer, it's actually a lot more accessible as well. I think that's had a massive change in the market. That's, instead of having to put up lots of money up front, we're now seeing people being a little bit more flexible with their commercial terms, and that allows a wider usage of it also. And just to Aris's point on sustainability, it's very difficult in a logistics operation to understand things like solar panels on your roof, whereas when you've got automation and some of this intralogistics kit in your site, you can actually understand where your peak load is going to be and where your min load is going to be. So it makes other things accessible within a warehouse environment that maybe weren't accessible before also.
Okay, thanks, Benjamin. That's really interesting. David Coombs, from your position as principal of the brand new National College for Logistics, where do you see where we are now?
Thanks, David. I can obviously just talk from a sort of talent and workforce perspective, because that's obviously what we're really about at the college. And this college is launched last week purely because there is a real challenge around attraction and retention of young people, that sort of future workforce. So as a college, what we're sort of looking at now is the challenge that attraction, we're talking about logistics as a tech, innovation, lean, green sector rather than using the word logistics. We're looking at how we can move people into these entry level roles and actually retain them as well, Dave, because retention is a really big challenge as well. So it's about how we get that workforce sort of pre-inducted, work ready, engaged. And so they go into these operations, they know their pathways, they know their career opportunities, and they stay. So the biggest challenge we're seeing is attraction and then retention.
Okay, thank you. Arthur, could I turn to you now? You're from your perspective as the MD at Linde Material Handling in Ireland.
Yes, so I'm also very much involved in the UK scenario, and we are having great success in our intralogistics design and delivery of projects. It's clear, while taking up every point made so far, every one I would agree with, and I'll add in the idea that we also find that automated machines are inherently less dangerous, potentially more safe than human-driven machines, and that is a big attraction for people. So we have all seen the horror stories on LinkedIn of entire racking systems that collapse with calamitous end results for a small deviation by a driver. And in generally speaking, when you can design in safety into automated systems, and that is definitely an attraction for warehouse owners and operators. We're also finding that there is a drive for ever decreasing cost base. And of course, everybody knows one of the higher costs that every business has is payroll. So automated solutions, when they're flexibly financed in the way described by Benjamin earlier on, that makes it very attractive for individual companies and 3PL companies to be able to commit beyond the life cycle of their normal 2 or 3 year contracts. So all of those factors together are driving a demand for automation that thankfully in the Linde world we're actually able to satisfy.
And thank you, Arthur. Laura, could I turn to you finally? Last but not least, of course, from your perspective as Managing Director at RTITB, where would you say we are now?
Yeah, I think we're interesting position really as RTITB. We obviously train people, quality assure that training, particularly instructors, and we've seen increasingly we've got manufacturers of AMRs and AGVs approaching us saying we need you to help train the people that are going to be working around them so that we can maximize our productivity and efficiency on implementation. So that speaks to Benjamin's point about that short time frame to really demonstrate value. But then equally, we've got operators who've installed ASRS, for example, coming to us saying, actually, we put it in and we're not getting any benefit or the benefits we expected because the people working in it, around it, with it, don't know what to do with it. So we're actually increasingly being asked to develop instructor courses focused on giving people those digital skills, the ability to be confident around these automation systems. So yeah, I would agree with every point that's been made, and say that we are quite focused on both the attraction that David mentioned of young people, but equally, how do we augment the experience that we have in the sector without disengaging perhaps what we call the older workforce, maybe, that are still very much part of it, still have all the experience that we need. So we want to make sure that we don't disenfranchise those people at the same time. So kind of that training instructor, digital champion piece is really important.
Well, thank you very much for all of our panelists there for that lovely introduction to the webinar. Now, we've heard for a long time now about the huge benefits that automation and robotics can bring, but where are intralogistics providers and their customers on this technological journey? How's it transforming things, and what's to watch out for in this area? Benjamin, would you mind if I started with you on this question?
No, that's fine. I think it's probably a little bit easier for me to talk about kind of the use and journey if I can. So we, like I said before, we looked a lot at point automation before we started designing our new super site in Northampton, which is a little bit more sort of integral with automation. I think from our perspective, it was really a whole new learning and a whole new sort of culture change. Just talking to the points there in terms of generational differences, you've got quite a lot of sort of younger people in our team that were very excited by the project, and then on the flip side, a larger proportion of sort of the older generations that have either had challenges in the past with automation where it hasn't been as flexible or it hasn't been able to do what we wanted it to do. So they're kind of more risk adverse side of the business. And I think from our perspective, it's just been quite difficult to kind of negotiate our way through that whole process of learning. And there's no single point to go to learn about this type of technology. You have to go to 70 odd different suppliers to understand exactly what each specific piece of kit does, and then try and select the best one out of 7 or 8 that you get to the bottom of. I think I would say that is the most difficult thing to do as a business going into any kind of automation. And I think actually some of our European colleagues have a better chance of understanding that. So where I work with some of the Dutch team in our head office, they've had automation for a very long time, whereas in the UK, we're not so great at it because we've always had labour availability and things like that. So it's a real kind of turning point for the logistics industry in the UK for sure.
Arthur, do you concur with that? Is that your experience, Linda, as well? Oh, Arthur, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Apologies. So, in our company, it's slightly different. We're part of the Keon Group, and our strategic direction has been to be a one-stop shop. So we're in the happy position where we can actually fully integrate with warehouse management systems and our own trucks. So we are in a place where we can go in and help design a warehouse and then deliver the ultimate automation solution within it. So I fully agree with Benjamin's misgivings about integrating different systems, but I guess when you've got the right talent and the right people available, that is quite possible. And the other one is that we have a finance in-house. So we're in that place where Benjamin said, where we can basically provide solutions that are based on a monthly invoice and designed to suit the application. That is unique, and it is also pretty new for us. So while Lindy has been on the automation journey for a number of years, the full integration of an entire package offer is relatively recent. And I do think that's making it more attractive. We are also in an ever-evolving situation. At the end of the day, warehouse management systems are the key to this whole automation of logistics. And if we can't have inventory controls interacting indirectly with the automated machinery, then the whole thing is prone to failure. So thankfully, over time, the technology leaps are there every year in relation to integrating software across different platforms. And I think that is probably the biggest improvement over the last couple of years, and probably will drive the best, potentially exponentially improve the progress over the next few years as systems speak better to each other than they have in the past.
Aris, can I turn to you as well and ask you, in your capacity as director of the Agile Supply Chain Research Club at Cranfield, what are you hearing from members of the club about the technologies driving these new levels of agility?
Thanks. So indeed, the Agile Supply Chain Research Club is a boutique club, and we've got about 20 members that we speak to, engage very, very closely. We hear them, and we discuss topics like the technology developments. So I think to answer the question, it's a mixed bag. I think I've seen companies that are really they really have an appetite for this technology and the investments, and there is always the type of companies which are a little bit more conservative. I think what we miss in many cases is some successful use cases or best practices. I think a lot of companies, because of the plethora of applications and technologies, they are a little bit lost in terms, where do I start that journey? So I think that's probably how I see this.
Okay, thank you. I want to follow up with another question with you now, Aris, because we all know that AI is shaking up the world we all live in and do business in. So I wonder what you see as its main applications in the intralogistics domain, and whether you can give us any examples of best practice, that have come to your attention to date, and what are the main challenges?
Yes, thanks, Dave. Well, I don't think there is a field that is not affected by AI. This is just the implications are tremendous across the whole operational coverage. So whether it's inventory management and optimization, whether it's improving accuracy for picking, reducing stock out rates, predictive maintenance, workflow, route optimization, demand forecasting, it's all there, and it's happening. I mean, there's some fantastic examples, and there's companies that have really progressed a lot on the AI. I mean, Blue Yonder is one, more on the retail sector. But if you look at some of the big players, Amazon, of course, they are doing some fantastic things at integrating existing automation solutions with AI. And this is just the beginning. So it's going to be a very, very exciting few years to come.
And Benjamin, from the standpoint of a logistics provider, can you give us some examples of best practice?
Yeah, I think so. We're just going into AI in terms of what we do. So if you think about how a customer relationship works for us, a lot of our customers are using AI for forecasting, just as an example. And we are the end point of that forecast. What we tend to be using AI for is things like looking at that forecast and making sure that it is actually going to be what they think it's going to be. Because a lot of customer forecasts are based on sales, and a lot of logistics forecasts are based on sort of reality and through the door. So we use it more as a secondary check than to run anything particularly today. As we move into the new site, that will change. So Aris just talked about optimization of stock, ABC analysis, all those kinds of standard things that you might do on a snapshot basis. We're trying to integrate that into the intralogistics that we've got in the site, and the automation that we've got into the site to do that automatically for us. But again, back to a previous point from Arthur, if we don't get that WMS right, the AI will be reading the wrong data and it will output the wrong thing. So really, it's about getting the fundamentals right that we already know today, and then overlaying the AI on top of it and testing it. And I think one thing that I've seen from particular customers is where they forget that you actually still need to check the AI. And I think sometimes that's the part where AI goes wrong. And we've seen that definitely in about 2 or 3 cases where they've started to automate something and just left the AI to run and make the decisions for them. And actually, you do need some human control over the top of it to make sure the outputs are right.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Arthur, what's your view on that from a materials handling provider?
We are moving towards the implementation of AI solutions. We have it already in some of the sensors and the trucks and the systems that we use. For me, I think that I've been thinking about this over the last few days in advance of the seminar, and I think that AI is probably moving towards the human condition where we can differentiate 10 or 12 shades of gray, and in the technology world, that's not really possible. We're still digitally driven. It's more or less a yes or no input output. And when you talk about the ability to move cases around a warehouse, that's okay when it's all palletized. But as we move on now, our technology is evolving so we can pick individual items like a single bottle of a product. Now, let's take a bottle of Sif. There's a yellow bottle and there's a grey bottle and there's a green bottle. And I suppose as we progress now, AI will allow us to pick different color products in individual cases and things like that, not fully reliant on reading barcodes, which are very digital. So I think that AI in our world is going to allow us a more human view of our picking abilities and our sorting abilities. I know that Amazon has already done that in some shops where there's virtual assistants, and the AI cameras watch what people pick up, and they get charged as they leave with whatever goods that they've taken, and that is quite a sophisticated algorithm. And I think that is probably the direction to travel, taking that expensive AI technology and moving it back into day-to-day, more mundane tasks that we already carry out.
David, do you think there are any implications? Well, I'm sure there are implications here for the workforce development with the challenge of AI, getting the development of people.
Yes, I mean, obviously we've got this wonderful demographic, haven't we, at a college where the average student age is probably 21. So, of course, they really are already embracing that technology, the emerging technology. So what we're seeing from our customers, from our logistics employees, is that the people that we bring into their world certainly need to be able to use AI instinctively. So our sort of entry-level courses include that. But actually, there's a lot more about that sort of mindset and cultural shift. So, can they embrace continuous improvement, innovation? Are they open to change? That's the sort of things we're looking for when we put people onto our courses. Do they have ability to use learning hubs, and are they good at change management and communication? So we've got a great sort of core to work from. It's more about how we translate their passion and interests and their use of technology already into a logistics sector.
And Laura, from your point of view, workforce development, is that a challenge, do you think, in AI?
Yeah, I do think so. I think, as David mentioned, I mean, our experience is actually a little bit different in that some of the younger people are more nervous of AI because they hear the horror stories, they understand cybersecurity, etc. more. Whereas people probably my age, the old people now, we've been through so much change in our lives with, the internet, Google phones, etc., that we do embrace change quite quickly and we are able to adapt. So we're doing quite a lot of work around encouraging the younger people in the workforce to give it a go and not be frightened of failure. They live in a world where instant gratification, instant opinion is very important. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, it's all snapshot in the moment. I've got an opinion, I've got a reaction. So that fear of failure is very strong. And so we have to overcome that with AI, which is different to the older generation where there's that fear of it perhaps a little bit. But certainly it has the power to completely change even the way we develop training as well. There's this huge steps that can be made there as well.
And in addition to AI, Aris, I wanted to ask you: are there other major developments in the coming along down the road for the warehouse of the future?
Yes. So of course, robots is a key aspect of this technology trajectory for businesses. I mean, top of my head, I think in Germany last year, 24, we had a bit less than 30,000 robots being installed in different environments. So that's one. Of course, we've got the AMRs, autonomous systems in the warehouse, in the warehouse, sensors, RFID, and that creates also, I think, an additional opportunity for business models. I mean, there's a growing discussion now about robots as a service, a business model, and cloud solutions as pay as you go. That's also something that is changing. And immersive. I think the final, I guess, point would be around the immersive digital operations. So making the life of operators in the warehouse easier. So digital twins also. So there's a quite big spectrum of technologies in addition to the GPS trackers, sensors, and all that, which I think makes the point about integration one of the real challenges. And I think Ben mentioned this in his first comment. How do you integrate now all these different widgets in the warehouse?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm conscious of time here, so I'm going to move us on a little bit. If you'll excuse me, I want to talk a bit about sustainability, because only last week there was a report from business sustainability ratings provider EcoVadis that showed that around 2/3 of UK businesses are not reporting their supply chain emissions. Only 14% setting a target, just 6% are on track or ahead of schedule to meet their targets. Given that supply chains form up to 95% of total emissions produced by UK PLC, how do you rate the performance of intralogistics operations in this area? And if you could cite some examples again of best practice, that would be very useful. And how can the sector support its customers in their net zero targets? Could I start with Arthur on this one?
You certainly can. I suppose this is one of my specific tasks within the Keon Group in the UK and Ireland. And we've done considerable work to implement improved sustainability. So our view is that it starts with the product that we create and we make in the factories. The way that we make the products is more sustainable than before. And you might think that something as relatively dirty as a counterbalance forklift that has a big weight on the back made from cast iron of a couple of tons that traditionally was made by smelting ore using coke as an energy source. It's kind of hard to imagine how that could be made cleaner. But of course it can. And the way that our company is tackling that is by using electric arc furnaces that are powered by wind and or solar energy. So we have a situation where the steel and the iron that's in our trucks is coming from more ecologically sound base than before. We recycle lots of metal and use that as the base materials. It is not perfect, but it is definitely a good step on the journey. If we talk about sustainability in the round, our corporation is driven by the basic tenet that we have justice across our entire operation. So everybody is paid a just wage. All of our suppliers are checked that we don't have slave labor, that we're not doing big ecological damage at our source for the materials, etc., are minimizing that impact. And EcoVadis, as a certification program, takes in all aspects, including governance. It's not just about your carbon footprint. So our entire operation is driven towards reducing our carbon footprint and improving everybody's life on the planet ultimately. Very noble, but I would say we're not atypical of the majority of multinational corporations. So it seems that this is a business and commerce trend these days where everybody is more tuned into being sustainable, that we all report sustainability as part of our annual reports. And there is a move in Europe to improve that whole adherence to those very noble goals. On a local basis, then, we are then taking that sustainability and using it as a business imperative. So just taking one example, solar energy. You'd imagine in the Ireland and UK and particularly Ireland, we don't get that much sunshine, but it's actually remarkable that we can still generate about half of our electricity consumption in the next 5 years will come from solar panels on the roof. And that is a big change. That's a huge reduction in our carbon footprint in our operations. The other one, of course, is that we make trucks with batteries that are energy storage systems. So the smart money as we move along with this is that people will use more and more solar and wind power, and then they will have our kind of trucks and batteries on site, charge them, and those units, those energy storage systems can then be used to run the building at nighttime when we haven't got wind and or solar. So there's a whole integration piece with our products into this. And I think that as we move ahead, more and more of our customers are interested in that possibility. And from our side, we're driving an agenda to make that one of our USPs. So it's interesting that a forklift truck that starts its life out in a not particularly ecologically friendly way can ultimately be a big contributor to improved sustainability in a business. And I think that is the overarching ambition for everybody in our world these days.
Yeah, thanks, Arthur. Benjamin, you alluded to sustainability earlier when you mentioned solar panels. What's your view on this, particularly with a view to that EcoVadis survey?
Well, it's actually quite interesting what Arthur just said there, because I think that's the biggest problem that we've got. So we're EcoVadis Gold, and just to sort of back up everything that Arthur said there, it's not just sustainability; it's everything to do with CSR, etc. And they are very noble goals. One of the big challenges that we've had in designing our site from a sustainability point of view is we effectively want to be 100% renewable off the site. So we want the whole site to be fully fitted with solar panels so that we can power the whole site off of renewable energy. We could do that by going to the utilities companies and buying renewable energy. That's fantastic. But effectively, it's just a scheme where they're taking whatever goes back to the grid and providing you with electricity up to that point. So it's not really creating your own renewable energy. One of the challenges we've had in designing the system is that if we fit the whole roof out and we generate 100%, what happens when we actually generate 120%? Because you can't just stop producing solar energy. That's the problem. So I think one of the Linde battery solutions that we've seen where you can basically hold that energy is going to be something very useful for us in the future. From a sustainability point of view, outside of that, again, everything that I think you can do in an older site is very limited. So things that people don't think about when it comes to solar panels is, can your roof load take those solar panels and all the sort of technical stuff behind that. So really, I think if anybody is going for a new warehouse, you should be looking for an automated solution coupled with some kind of sustainability, whether that's solar panels or wind farming, just to kind of future-proof that. It's really difficult to retrofit this stuff, I think I would say, as a key point, really. That's one thing that we've found definitely from looking at our whole portfolio and trying to retrofit some of these things onto roofs, etc. It just doesn't work very well.
Okay, thanks. And Aris, what's your view on the sustainability piece at the moment?
I agree with the points made. A couple more points from my side. I think when you look at the average, if I can make that point, the average UK company probably is affected by about a bit less than 20 regulations, UK and EU. So I think for me, a key point is, and what we see from our research is that there's quite a big gap in terms of the awareness of some of the regulations. of the existing regulation, and the forthcoming regulations as well. So there's a lot of work to be done there. I think big players have that responsibility as chain captains as well to drive that adoption with smaller companies. Now, on the actual emission side, if you look at the projections, in 2030, 2040, we may be talking about 30-40% the logistics sector being accountable for greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a lot of work to be done, primarily scope 3. But how do you get scope 3? How do you get companies sharing data with you? And I think the other point and the final point would be around the probably evidence-based. I think a lot of the companies not necessarily have a good understanding of their emissions. They're not conducting meticulous assessments of the emissions that it takes to produce a product. So I think there's work to be done, but there are solutions available at the moment that make things, simplify the calculation, simplify the assessments. But definitely I would highlight the importance for awareness in the supply chain.
And Laura, this business of actually calculating emissions and that sort of thing, I mean, obviously that's a lot of that is going to be about skills development and things like that. So how do you see that from your point of view?
Yeah, it's becoming ever increasing a requirement around the sustainability piece. In our particular sector, section of kind of workforce development, we deal a lot with heavy vehicle drivers, forklift truck drivers, etc. So for them, the calculation of it isn't front and center, but what does matter to them and to their employers as well is, do they understand how to operate sustainably, how they can contribute and make a difference to that piece, to that calculation, and just understanding and communicating that ability that actually, if you change your driving style or you'll change your operations in the warehouse, then you can make a real difference to the sustainability piece. But it is critical. It's absolutely fundamental. We sustainability is everywhere, and I'm sure David would kind of pick up on this again. For young people, it's a critical part of why they choose an employer as well. So that's a really key bit that we need to think of when we think about workforce development and retention, is how are we communicating our commitment to sustainability as well.
Yeah. So David, I mean, could you comment on that? I mean, are your students, are they very switched on to this stuff already?
Do you know what, David? You're very right, Laura. I was speaking to 150 students recently in an auditorium. Most of them were asleep. Some of them on the phone. Most of them on the phones. You know that sort of young generation. And the two things that got them awake and got them enthusiastic and passionate were, well, obviously innovation in technology as a sector that we're embracing that. But the other thing was very much around sustainability and green. And they're all really passionate about saving the planet. They're really passionate about helping that next generation in terms of sustainability. So when we talk about a sector that really is at the forefront of sustainability because of regulation, because of the big impact that we have, when I talk about that, that's the sector they want to join. We talk about how warehouses are designed now with sustainability in mind. We talk about the trucks of the future. We talk about automation bringing sustainability in. So this is a sector that they really get excited about, and it's really important that we put that into our courses. All our entry-level courses now have a green and lean element when we put through that sort of first introduction.
I want to talk now about a trend that has been talked about, which fits with the sustainability agenda, which we were just talking about, and that's micro-fulfillment and last-mile deliveries. And how big do you think micro-fulfillment will become? Who's doing it well? What are the opportunities and challenges? Aris, could I start with you on this one?
Yes, we've seen this as one of the trends. Fundamentally, it's driven by the growth of e-commerce. Certainly, post-pandemic, there's been a tremendous growth, change consumer patterns. It doesn't seem that it's going to stop. So in terms of the applications or successes, you look around, you see the definitely big providers, big retailers, they're making the most. They're setting up a very complex network of parcels, solutions, pickup points, a wide nexus of options for the consumers. So that's not going to change. But it's a growing business, but I wouldn't say it's a dominant at this point.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. What's your view on that?
Well, we're kind of unique in our company's sectors because we are what you would call in the food sector farm to fork. So we produce trucks and then we actually support them in the field. So the engineers who repair trucks and live for Lindy in the UK and Ireland are actually ultimately direct employees in the factory. So we're involved in last mile delivery of a service and spare parts to trucks that are in the field. And I guess that the two things that strike me, we are on a mission to move to as many EVs as possible, full EV, because clearly if we're generating electricity at the depots, logically we should be charging the vans that are servicing the customers. And in doing so, we're going to be more sustainable, reduce carbon footprint, all of the good stuff. But the thing that strikes me in the UK is when we try to do that, we're kind of tied up in knots by the taxation policy. To do with benefit in kind and providing a vehicle to a driver and so on. And I think that if we're serious about tackling the last mile and being serious about reducing our carbon footprint, that subject of how we encourage businesses to invest in more fully powered EVs, full EV powered vehicles, etc., is one that really needs attention. There are multiple. I think that our taxation policy in the UK, to a lesser extent Ireland, is very much driven by the CO2 element and fossil fuels and workarounds related to all of that. I don't think that we have got a coherent taxation policy in relation to vehicles, and it's one that I think that we would welcome some improvements in. Not necessarily clarity is there, but I think there should be better incentives to drive that last mile performance across all sectors. At the end of the day, there are vans running around the UK in their millions every day. And I think that if we're going to reduce our carbon footprint, then we need to tackle that part of the equation. Drones are one part of it. And one of our conversations was, will our engineers be able to have spare parts delivered by drones? I think that's okay. In Aberdeen, from Basingstoke, I'm not so sure that's practical, but there are areas where I think we will be able to embrace that kind of technology. But in the meantime, we are reliant on vans to get people around.
And Benjamin, at Houston Logistics, what's your view on this last mile delivery thing?
I think last mile, specifically micro fulfillment, is quite an interesting area to watch. I don't think anyone's got it right yet. And the reason why nobody's got it right is there are literally thousands of companies doing this with effectively people on bikes or small EV vehicles trying to get in and out of town. So highly populated areas work really well for that type of thing because you've got the density of your deliveries from a D2C perspective. So you can do that pretty well on a multi-drop, whether that's by bike or by van, etc. So I think that industry is going to grow. The bit that's missing in that industry is sort of a couple of key players rising up and maybe coming together and creating something. Because I think from our perspective, so we've got customers that ask for same-day deliveries, and it's quite difficult to get the same supplier in multiple cities. That's a very difficult task to get to. I think also the one thing that we're missing, and maybe this is where it will go in the future, is that whole returns leg. Because if you think about D2C, what we've effectively done is we've taken the changing room out of a retail environment and we've put it into somebody's bedroom. So now people buy 4 to 5 items of different sizes and they try them in the bedroom and they send them back. So it's all fine having the micro sort of logistics and delivery into your house, or your flat or whatever. But then the delivery back out is still being done by a pretty old school man in a van picking it up, bringing it back. Not to mention the fact that it on its own, the D2C sort of percentage on returns is something near 30%. So you're bringing a whole load of stuff back from somebody's house on a leg that didn't really need to exist in the beginning. So I think that's probably the way that it needs to go back to. It needs to get a handle on that returns piece, either by lowering the amount of returns that are going out, or by finding a way to create an environment where people have got that option to kind of try before they buy. I think some of the larger retailers have got a great way of doing that, where they have a shop front environment, but then they also offer something slightly different on their e-com, so people can go and try it on and then buy it off e-com if they want it. But I think that's something that's just going to grow. We're consumers. We like to buy stuff. That is one of the things that we know about the UK and that environment. Although it's kind of plateauing now, I think D2C, it has been growing about 15% year on year. It's starting to sort of level out. It's not something that's going to go away. It just needs something cohesive around it now, I think, to make it firm and make it an actual industry.
Thanks, Benjamin. I'm conscious that we are up against time here, so I'm going to move on. But thank you all for those answers. I want to talk now about how the intralogistics market in the UK needs to evolve to meet constant change and risks, such as increasing geopolitical situations, climate change, new policies and regulations, cybersecurity, and of course the ever expectant end customers that Benjamin was just referring to. Aris, could you give us a bit of an overview on that, please?
Yes, Dave. You're right. There's so much going on, and UK is in the middle between a transition of global trade flows from west to east that hasn't settled yet. So there's a lot of different pressures, and of course, specifically for the UK. Some of the Brexit impacts, we continue to see in terms of nearshoring, reshoring. The landscape is changing significantly. Climate change impacts, are here to stay. That affects infrastructure as well, of course. And perhaps the other point is around cybersecurity. The threats have escalated to existential levels. If you look what happened the last couple of weeks here in the West Midlands, so I think this is where we are at the moment in terms of the bigger picture. I'd like to think that businesses have longer term plans and they can scan the horizon. But of course, everybody is limited in terms of capacity and capabilities. But I'd like to think that sustainability, since we talked about a lot, could be seen by many of the businesses as a key risk. So, and any mitigation plans you do to address sustainability, they impact directly your business performance.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the workforce of the future now in terms of skills and requirements and new roles. So obviously I'm looking at Laura and David for some answers here, but how do things need to change when it comes to developing the intralogistics workforce of the future? What are the ecosystems that are required to attract and support fit for the future recruits? What safety risks need to be taken into account with technological advances, and what's the role of digital champions in the workplace? David, I wonder whether you could address that one as with obviously the young people you're working with and training up.
Well, yeah, it's exactly why we've got this first National College for Logistics Day, because there's 1.6 million students, I think, going through the FE sector every year, and unfortunately, most of this wonderful demographic doesn't really understand or appreciate what a wonderful career opportunity there is for them in logistics. So as a college, we've got the obviously advantage of leveraging funding to as I've sort of said earlier, to think about how we start to attract and engage. And so what we're doing with our sort of entry level students at the moment is making sure that they're agile, making sure that they're tech savvy and they're resilient. So they may be tech savvy, as we said earlier, but actually that's more from a social perspective. Is it professional? So these sort of courses we're running at the moment are looking at AI, as we've said. We're talking about how we can think about them working in an environment where they're adding value through continuous improvement. We're looking at their communication skills. We're thinking about how their sort of mindset is. Are they open to change? Can they embrace sort of new cultures? Are they resilient? Are they able to work remotely? All these sort of skills, because it is such a fast-moving, dynamic environment. And the problem at the moment is you move into this environment. It's not 9 to 5. It's 24/7. It's a huge sort of change to perhaps what they're used to. So we've got to just be very careful that we properly sort of pre-induct. We think about how they might be work ready. We get them engaged. So when they first come onto site, and it's this wonderful, fully automated, fast-moving environment, that they're not sort of too sort of I suppose out of their depth, and they last about 2 or 3 weeks. So there's a big challenge of getting them there at the right sort of time, and letting them evolve, giving them the tools to evolve, coming back to them in 6 months' time and thinking about positive interventions, thinking about some leadership, some management, some more green training. So it's about getting them in at the right mindset, and then keeping hold of them and supporting them through that journey.
And Laura, what about from your point of view? How do things need to change to develop the intralogistics workforce of the future?
So for us, we think that what's currently called a forklift instructor, those people are absolutely critical to this transition. So what we're seeing is that those people are often the linchpin between management and kind of workers, if you use those words. And those people are the people that need to be on board with the change. They need to be the champions. They need to understand how it's going to make their life better so they can share it with their colleagues. What we're finding is that when there's automations retrofitted in particular, when warehouses are built specifically for sustainability and automation, it's quite a different environment. But when you're trying to kind of backfit those things, we find that those instructors that are early adopters, early engagement, are the people that make it a success or failure, because a lot of the people involved in the business that may have been there a long time look at it and go, oh, it's another management idea for us to be shoved out the door, or to make us do more for less money, etc. All the kind of cynical things that people think. And the instructors are such a powerful tool. They're trusted by their work colleagues, but they also have the skills and communication ability to make a project a success or failure. So they are absolutely critical to the future of making intralogistics as efficient and successful and safe as it can be.
Yeah, and that safety aspect, I mean, we've alluded to that before. One of our panelists said that in theory, modern technology can make things a lot safer. Is that do you agree with that?
Yes, if the people working around the systems understand the challenges. So we worked with a very, very large multinational bottling company, installed ASRS, and they were having serious incidents because the people working around the system hadn't had the training when it was implemented. So once we'd done that training, got the instructors on board, train the people working around it, yes, they absolutely was much, much safer. But that initial period was a really difficult, challenging time. And it almost made them question decisions around the implementation. So that it's implementation, but then it's acclimatization that's really important. It's that embedding period is critical for success.
Thank you. I want to, we're nearly out of time now, so I want to come to all of you for one final question. A question really, which I'm sure won't be that easy to answer, but I want you to all tell me what you see as the two or three biggest emerging trends in intralogistics from 2026 onwards. Aris, can I start with you on this one?
Yeah, I'll have two, I think, important ones to share. I think it's really about climate change and how this drive is driving green logistics revolution. I think that's a big trend. And then probably my second would be, and we alluded to, all speakers talked about this in one way or another. I think that the integration of the different technologies. I think this is going to be a big challenge for companies.
Okay, thank you, Aris. Benjamin Bird at Hewson, what are you predicting as the 2 or 3 biggest trends for 2026 onwards?
I think the biggest one for me would be the innovation in the sector. There's a lot of things changing. There's a lot of new products coming to market. There's a lot of different applications for things. I think Arthur talked about being able to unit pick and things like this. So where we're looking across everything, all these things like AI, etc., we're starting to see now that the evolution of some of those products is huge. And then the second thing, it has to be sustainability. I think we're really getting into that situation, and we see it from our customers. You know, we handle roughly about 200 RFQs a year, and I would say 5 years ago, sustainability was number 10 on the list. Price was always first. Now what we're seeing is sustainability is second or third, and price is still up there because price will always come into it, but it's definitely jumped up. So from a customer and a supplier's point of view, those are the things that you should really be looking at.
Thank you. And David Coombs, from your perspective at the National College for Logistics, are your I presume this is something your students will be interested in, but what do you see as the 2 or 3 biggest emerging trends?
Yeah, well, they're obviously very interested in technology and automation. So we talk about human-machine collaboration now. So using AI automation tools that assist the operative, the worker, in completing tasks quicker with fewer errors. So that really resonates, really interesting. But I like to use this phrase, Dave, that the rise of the super worker. So what we're seeing now is less perhaps external hiring and more internal promotions, because of course the culture in it. It is how we, and Laura will obviously understand this, how we upskill that existing workforce. We shouldn't be forgetting about them. What can we do more with the current talent we have?
And Arthur, what are your predictions for 2026 onwards? I think you're muted, Arthur. Sorry. Still can't hear you. Right, I'm not sure what's going on with Arthur. I tell you what, Arthur, while you sort your mute out, let me turn to Laura. Laura, could you tell me what you see as the 3 biggest emerging trends in intralogistics from 2026 onwards?
Yeah, I mean, all my colleagues on the panel have really, really covered them. But the one thing that I would kind of like to highlight is cybersecurity, which is seen as a negative trend potentially because of the exponential increase in attacks. But it's a real opportunity to engage the workforce in AI, cyber, and help them understand, because everyone hears about it all of the time. Nobody really knows what to do with it. It's a great hook to use to bring people into the journey. So I think we'll see more and more around cybersecurity, cyber education, and being ready for that what the future that is coming, the AI human working together future.
Thank you, Laura. And Arthur, hopefully we've got you now.
Yeah, I think I'm back, am I?
Yes, you are.
Very good. Sorry. So just 3 quick thoughts. One is that I think the cost of implementation for automated systems is reducing, and that trend will continue. I think the customer demand is increasing in line with comments from Benjamin. I think that is true. And the other piece, I think, is up to now, AI has largely been this large language modeling, and it's been primarily around effectively scraping information from the internet. I think as we go ahead now, we might see an improvement in the AI algorithms that allow us to use mathematical and systems modeling as well. And hopefully that will help with the integration between systems, because that is a major challenge. We've got too many systems that don't talk to each other. And in relation to people, we have to train everybody on every system, and that's not sustainable. So we have to have a system where AI, I think, would probably be a solution for part of that.
Thank you very much. So there we have it, an excellent and thought-provoking debate on what the future holds for intralogistics. A big thank you to our eminent panel, Professor Aris Matopoulos, Dr. Arthur Sullivan, Laura Nelson, David Coombs, and Benjamin Bird. And to you, our audience, we hope you found it illuminating. A recording of this webinar and a special report containing all the key discussion points from today's session will be available on the Intralogistics Live series section of the Linde Material Handling UK website. That's at linde-mh.co.uk. Thanks for watching and have a good day.